Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And it all depends on a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. But I have been on a interesting side path on the Zettelkasten, and tonight's question is no exception. This question comes from Alex. However, I must say that to fit it into a title, I had to seriously oversimplify Alex's question. I somewhat misunderstood the question that he asked last time. I thought he was talking about, my main card where I use a tagline and then I index the tagline and my lines are long. And I thought he was saying, use a shorter, stubbier tagline. No, that's not what he was talking about. He was talking about not necessarily indexing every card, indexing fewer cards, but have the index land into a clump of cards that are on a certain topic. And of course, that is very closely related to a suggestion that several of you were delighted with, which was Alex's suggestion that we have an index into a discussion, which is, I think, a lovely idea, because sometimes when you get several different authors' viewpoints in the same area, you can get a pretty exciting discussion going where you just capture the thought on a certain topic. So, yes, and several of you commented also on how insightful you thought that Alex's idea was. But to narrow it down then to the question of, well, do you really want to index every main card, or do you want to be somewhat sparse about it? And the answer is, it depends, of course. The short answer is no, you're not going to index every main card. But there are some interesting patterns that I have seen over the time evolution of my Zettelkasten, and that's really all I can do is share with you what I've discovered. Well, early on, when I was laying a foundation in my Zettelkasten, and the cards were about a similar topic and they were kind of packed together, I would find that I did not index anywhere near every card. And that was because I already had an index entry that governed that region, and so I wouldn't bother to make additional index entries. That was also during the time when I tended to use directory cards, lots of directory cards, and my indexes were the title of the directory card. So that was a whole pattern. I found out that as I went forward, and I had already kind of laid a base, and now I was adding new insights, then I was adding far fewer cards because the base was already laid. And in that case, just about every card I added was something new that contributed to the conversation. And so I would definitely want to index that card because it added something novel to the conversation. And if it didn't add anything novel to the conversation, well, then I've got Nicholas Gaetien's rule of thumb, which tells me basically, don't bother. You're either going to note it and say, oh yeah, somebody else thought the same thing. Interesting. Or if it's not on topic, you're just going to ignore it altogether. So that would mean, in that case, I was making far fewer main cards, but indexing a lot more of them. If I had 2 or 3 that were close together in the same area, I might only index 1 of the 3. But generally, I wouldn't be finding that I was making so many main cards. Now, there's also 2 completely different theories on what to do with the bib notes from a single source. And this goes back to Sertalanges. Well, why don't I go ahead and show some cards, because it'll be easier to talk from cards rather than just me spouting off, because you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So let's go take a look at the cards. Okay, here I'm taking a look at a stack of bib cards that I made from A.G. Sertalange's book, The Intellectual Life. This one book has the record that will probably never be broken for the most bib cards that I've ever made from a single book. 23 bib cards from this book. And my bib notes were quite exhaustive. This is one reference, and this is an entire note from one reference. So I was very taken by this book, as you can see just from the number of bib notes. And I have enjoyed having the extensive notes because I can take this stack of cards, and for the effort of reading 23 cards, I have effectively reread this book. So I don't apologize for this method at all. I see great value in it. Now, one of the things that I want to show you about these cards, in my notation system, this is a page number, and this is the last card. This is the bib card reference of the main card that I made from that page. And here's another bib card reference. Now, I don't know if you can see them. I'll try to hold them up a little bit closer. This one is in the area 3B. This one is in the area 1G. And a couple more in 1G. Here's one in 2E. So what I found with this book, because I was reading the book so intensively, and because I found the book to be so packed with wisdom, I had the concept in mind that I wanted the wisdom from this book to fly off in every direction possible. So therefore, I was rather deliberate in spreading these cards as far as they reasonably could go. So instead of saying, okay, here's a topic that Sertalange is developing, and I'll just put all the cards together, I didn't need to do that. I've got a bib card for that. So what I wanted to do was say, okay, where each thing applied to add that wisdom in that area. You'll still notice here that I did not make main cards from every bib note, and sometimes whole pages would go by and I would make few or none at all bib cards. So now, if I'm working with a book like this, where my bib cards are flying off into every direction, then I will probably index each one because it's a separate thought that went into a separate place. So this would not be an example of a discussion. This would be an example of little tidbits of wisdom sprinkling themselves hither and yon in my Zettelkasten. So this isn't really an example of Alex's idea of having pointers into discussions, but it is an example of when I would probably have indexing just about every card. I would have an index entry for just about every card. The other case where I would be likely to have an index entry for every card is when I am dealing with information that adds to an already mature topic. If I'm adding to an already mature topic, that's the one that I talked about earlier, then chances are this new piece of information that I'm adding is something new and will be worthy of being indexed. Now, what about when I might not index every card? Okay, my next example that I'm going to show you comes from a newsletter. This one is produced by Ken Caputo and Stephanie Roy. It's a life spiral newsletter, and it's about basically life integration. If you're a solo entrepreneur, how can you keep your life from going wildly out of balance? Just the balancing the various circles of life. But in this second issue, I was very taken by a notion that they bring up, which is the concept of the aha moment, inviting the aha moment. Now, I've written about how to produce the aha moment, how to set your reader up for the aha moment in my book, Writing with Emotion. But this turns out to be a different kind of an aha moment. This is how to set yourself up for having frequent and interesting aha moments. And they go through 12 different patterns to actually bring that about. It's the main theme of the newsletter. So since it was new to me, and again, here we go with our topic from Nicholas. Novelty, yep, it's new. And applicable, well, it was certainly applicable to my life. It's not specifically applicable to my research, but since I tend to be getting a little bit too heavy on the work, in the work-life balance, it did qualify as both novel and applicable. So I felt it was worthy of making main cards. So I kind of went maybe a little bit overboard, because after making bid notes on the subject, I did go ahead and make a main card out of each of the 12 topics that they discussed. So now, in preparation for doing indexing, I have created a tagline to go with each card that identifies how I could best summarize the card and my reaction to the card. So they have all been supplied. And now it would be time for me to start indexing these. Now, it's going to be interesting to find out where these cards are going to go, because I have an absolute determined, will not vary from concept that the card chooses its place in the Zettelkasten. So each card gets to individually choose where it wants to go in my Zettelkasten. In that process, if I find that a collection of these cards are all choosing to go to the same place and are choosing to clump together, then I will certainly not have index entries for everyone. But if I find as I go through these things that, for instance, here's one, avoid split attention. Well, I might well have something already in my system on that. And if this goes and expands the discussion, then that's where it will go, and it might be indexed. Whereas with a number of these, if they're really all exclusively about this concept of aha, and they're all collecting together, then I probably won't have, I'll probably actually choose to follow Alex's suggestion, which is choose one possibly in the middle of the discussion, the one that's the most salient, and under the aha moment, send myself there from that card. So I hope I answered your question, Alex. I really enjoy your questions, and let me come back to the face forward here to close. Okay, so thank you very much for your question, Alex, and thank you, all of you, for your interesting questions and notes and comments. I read every one, and I really enjoy them. I think I'm getting close to a decision for whether I want to choose to present with prefixes or without, with one digit or 4-digit prefixes or no prefixes at all. And I will have some thoughts to share fairly soon on that. I've been doing some interesting little experiments in the background, and so I will be bringing some more of that to you. And once again, thank you all for participating in this conversation. I know my Zettelkasten box has just been a tray of experiments from the get-go, but it's a lot of fun sharing this journey with you. It's the main point, and the reason why I'm willing to go so far from my field to do all of this is I hear so many of you saying that you haven't gotten your Zettelkasten going, or you just barely got it started and it stalled, or you've made a whole collection of bib cards and you got a stack of bib cards and you haven't made any main cards. So that's the main reason why I'm sticking with this, because I hear more and more of you saying that you're now having the courage to start. So that's all it takes, because whatever you're doing with numbering, with indexing, all of these questions, they fall away once you're underway. So it's all entirely a question of getting off the ground. It's getting that airplane off the ground and into cruising altitude. So once you're at cruising altitude in your Zettelkasten, everything's easy. If there is no more difficulty, but just getting it set up, making your decisions, getting underway. And that's why I'm trying to do a little bit of experimenting and study to see if I can come up with a suggestion or a mechanism that I can share that simplifies the whole thing absolutely as much as possible, without oversimplifying it. Because you can end up creating current simplicity and future complexity if you don't get the decisions right in the first place. But I think by and large, I'm beginning to feel that I know, because I have so many numbering systems in my box, that they all coexist beautifully, and that any numbering system is okay. You just have to have one. But I'm trying to find the one that is the easiest to teach, the easiest to absorb, the easiest to get started, and the most flexible if you change your mind in the future. So I might have something fairly soon to share with you on that. So thank you very much for sticking with me. Bye-bye.